I would like to take this moment to welcome you, first of all, to Unionville Missionary Baptist Church. Presently, you are seated in the IMAC Worship and Fellowship Center, which is an extended facility of the Unionville Missionary Baptist Church. We're honored today to be here for this summit under the heading of Protecting Houses of Worship. And there's a partnership that's existing today that we're very proud to be a part of, which is the U.S. Attorney General's Office, along with the Georgia Sheriff Association, of course, Macon-Bibb Sheriff Department, and the Fellowship Missionary Baptist Convention. As I was thinking about extending welcome to you, one thing that came to my mind was the scripture that says, I was glad when they said unto me, let us go into the house of the Lord. Now, if you love the Lord, you can say amen, because you are in the Lord's house. Now, that sounds better. Amen. And I said to myself, we want to always be able to live that scripture out. I was glad when they said unto me, let us go into the house of the Lord. When we look back at Charleston, South Carolina, and other areas, states, and cities that have been impacted by hate crime and by the atrocity of hate crime, it really moves us to the fact that it's hard to quote that scripture, I was glad. You almost quoted by saying I was sad the day I went into the house of the Lord. So we want to keep our people glad, not sad. Next of all, the scripture says, except the Lord build the house, the labor is in vain. And we are all house builders, and we want not our labor to be in vain, but our labor to be valuable. So allow me again, as pastor of Unionville Missionary Baptist Church and president of the Fellowship Missionary Baptist Convention of the state of Georgia, to welcome each of you. And we're very pleased, proud, and privileged of the partnership that is starting. And I do believe that we will leave here today much better than when we arrived, because I think that there is some very potent and powerful, pertinent information on protecting houses of worship. And allow me to say, welcome to our house.
Thank you, Doctor. And again, my name is Peter Leary. I'm the United States Attorney here in the Middle District of Georgia, which covers 70 counties and is based here in Macon. And we had the idea to put this series together several months ago, and unfortunately it is just as timely, if not more timely now than it was when we wanted to bring people together from a lot of different houses of worship, from a lot of different faiths, because the commonality, of course, is wherever one worships, that should be a place of peace and it should be a place of safety. And what we're fortunate to have here today with Brent Leffler, who's the Director of Training for the Georgia Sheriff's Association, are some very practical tips that y'all can take back to your houses of worship to make sure that they remain safe places, because unfortunately in Middle Georgia and beyond, we've really seen an ongoing spate of violence across our country. We've seen violence directed at people because of their faith, because of the color of their skin, and we want to make sure that everything we can do ahead of time here in Middle Georgia we do, so that everybody can have the opportunity to worship however they worship, whoever they worship, in peace. So I want to thank, again, Dr. Mack for having us here today. Thank Unionville Missionary Baptist Church for hosting us. I want to thank Major Woodford and Colonel Carswell from the Bibb County Sheriff's Office for everything that they had done for us, and Pam Lightsey from our office at the U.S. Attorney's Office for putting this together. I want to take a moment and mention, you'll see on the agenda that you're going to hear from Chanel Booker, our Acting First Assistant and Criminal Chief, for a second about some hate crimes matters. Lance Simon from our office was unable to be here to talk about some civil rights matters. Lance is our civil rights coordinator from the Civil Division. Unfortunately, he was called into court unexpectedly. But I wanted to just make sure that our members here are leaders of faith, who are leaders in the community, understand that at the U.S. Attorney's Office we have a valuable mission that AUSA Booker will talk about in terms of prosecution with hate crimes, but we also have a very valuable mission in terms of civil rights matters as well, whether they be housing, disability, education, voting rights, rights for service members, the civil rights of institutionalized persons, We're very involved in all of those areas, and y'all are the folks who may see those kind of problems. And if you do, I would strongly encourage you to reach out to our office. If you have people in your houses of worship who are dealing with these issues, we are here at the U.S. Attorney's Office to help with those, and we have got folks who are dedicated to doing that. So if you want any more information about that, I'll certainly be here afterwards. But I do want to, before I call AUSA Booker up, ask Sheriff Davis if he wants to come say a few words.
Thank you, Peter. I just want to say that I want to first thank Pastor Mack for hosting in this house of worship. He is the shepherd of this house, and it is because of his generosity that we're all here. And I want to thank you for opening your doors to this important training session. I also want to thank the Georgia Sheriff's Association, Brent Leffler, for being here and teaching this. As I told him, he's used to teaching a bunch of sheriffs, so he'll have people that'll be paying attention today. So we appreciate that, and I see some other folks from other law enforcement agencies here, and certainly U.S. Attorney's Office, Peter Leary and Pam Lightsey, and the things that they have done. And I just want to know, this is what this is about, is to give you some tips, give you some knowledge about what to do. We live in a dangerous world now. We live in an ever-changing, ever-dynamic world, both nationally and even here locally. So we need to know as much as we can to keep ourselves safe. This course of instruction will give you some ideas. Are we going to solve all the problems? No, but it will give you some pointers. It will give you some points to think about. It will give you some ideas that we can spread and pass this on to other faith leaders and other people in our community to keep us safe. But the other thing we want to tell you is that we are here. We're here to hopefully avoid something bad happening, but we are here to support you in every way that we can from law enforcement to avoid these types of tragedies. But if the tragic event does occur, that we will be here to respond. We'll be here to help you get through it. So God bless each and every one of you for participating, and we look forward to some great training. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. My name is Chanel Booker, and as my U.S. Attorney, a.k.a. my boss, Mr. Peter Leary, said, I am our criminal chief, and so I supervise all the criminal prosecutions for the 70 counties that we serve, in addition to being his right-hand woman for the moment. I keep them in line and keep them in check. But the main thing that I want to talk with you all about today is that I'm also our hate crimes coordinator on the criminal side. So if there ever is any type of criminal activity that is targeted at you or one of your houses of worship because of your faith, our office will be the one to prosecute that case after law enforcement does their investigation. And the good thing about our district and our area is that we work hand in hand with law enforcement when something happens. We don't wait until after the investigation is over. We're calling the moment something happens. So for instance, when we heard about shootings in Macon over the weekend, we reached out to our local law enforcement partners, including Sheriff Davis and the FBI, to see how we could help. And that extends to anything that may, heaven forbid, I hope it doesn't, happen at any of your particular house of worship. We have the ability to prosecute people for damaging your property. For instance, if they spray some nasty slur on your building, if they damage your property or they target you because of your religious values, we can take those kinds of cases. If you have someone that is trying to intentionally deprive you of exercising your right to religion, I won't go into all the legal aspects of it, but if you have someone that is definitely trying to prevent you or your parishioners or anyone at your house of worship from actively worshiping wherever that place may be, we can look into that from a criminal prosecution standpoint. And unfortunately, as Peter said, it is very timely right now. We've had churches being targeted for people based on their race, their religion, their ethnicity, and even whether or not they're a male or a female standing in the pulpit or the place where the message is given at a particular house of worship. The good thing about Peter and I is even though we cover 70 counties, we're based here in Macon, and Peter and I both live and worship here, and our families worship here too. And before we get started with Mr. Leffler's training, I just want to reiterate how great it is, because I've had the opportunity to watch it and listen to it and even encourage my own church, which is here in Macon, come to the training. And because of that training, we were able to prevent an incident at my own church. And so I really, really want you all to pay attention because this could be valuable and life-saving. And so this was as recent as Mother's Day Sunday. This young man was upset that he didn't have access to his child. He wasn't able to see his child. The child's mother and the new love interest were coming to our churches to worship on Mother's Day, and for some reason he got word of that. He was out in the parking lot, and he had a firearm with him. But because our church went to this training and had a beefed up security that, isn't intrusive, you can still enjoy the worship service without feeling like, armed security is breathing down your neck. But they did keep a watchful eye out in the parking lot as well as in the sanctuary. And they were able to spot this young man, talk to him, engage him, and de-escalate the situation with nobody getting hurt, no charges being brought, as well as that young man worked out a way to be able to see his child consistently. And to me, that's a victory. That's directly related to this type of training. So I encourage you all to pay attention, be engaged, and I hope that you all definitely think about implementing some of these at your own houses of worship. Thank you so much.
Good afternoon. Y'all doing okay today? I didn't realize so many cameras will be here. If they say about cameras and putting weight on you, I'm in trouble. Okay, this is going to be fun. Of course, my name is Brent Leffler. I am the Director of Training with the Georgia Sheriff's Association. And, of course, I'm here to represent Georgia, all of Georgia's 159 sheriffs. The sheriffs recognize this as a problem. Unfortunately, this isn't new. We have watched school issues, we have watched church issues, we have watched issues all over the place, hospitals and malls. I'm here today to lend a lot of suggestions, lend to you a number of issues and suggestions that I hope you can take back to your local churches. Is this earth-breaking, earth-shattering new stuff I'm bringing to you? Absolutely not. But it's also coming to you from an individual who's been in law enforcement for 36 years and maybe kind of give you a different perspective. It's one thing when you can come here and you can worship in this location and you see it every single day. And it's another thing when you get an individual with a fresh pair of eyes come in and can start seeing little issues that you may or may not want to address. What we're going to talk about today is some interesting stuff. And my hope is you can take back some good ideas and take them back to your local houses of worship, sit down with your leadership, and devise some kind of a plan. Some of these issues, some of these plans might be very minimal, kind of take it a baby step approach. Others might want to jump in there with both feet and really make an impact. But this is going to be something that we'll all share. So let's go ahead and get started. Turn that on. I don't know if many of you have ever heard of a Jimmy Meeks. He is a church security expert, and I'll just read those for you that can't possibly see on the back row. Of course, why do we need security for houses of worship? Security should not be the main focus, but providing adequate security will help create an environment where people don't fear violence and it does not hinder them from attending services. Period. That's what we're going to discuss today, and it's going to be a good time. And also, this is going to be an interactive class. If anyone has any questions at any time, raise your hand. I can get chatty, but of course I'd love to chat back and forth. So at any time you got questions, we will stop and we'll go and we'll discuss it. Let's get into this thing. Obviously, attacks in this way, churches, schools, whatever, it's not new. We have had the unfortunate reality that when we are at home, when we are traveling, we see this stuff over and over again on the news. Obviously, in the past 15 years, over 960 events in houses of worship and other religious services in this country. That's way too much. I mean, it's one of these locations that you're supposed to go to and you're supposed to feel safe. However, that's not the world we live in anymore. But we can make changes to that. Over 295 of these incidents happened inside the actual structure of the church. Over 665 of these incidents occurred on the property or near that event. Of course, in this, there have been over 400 people killed because of this. Now, I will tell you, the majority of the individuals who are involved in this, more times than not, are familiar with your church. More times than not, are a member of this congregation. More times than not, have some kind of an issue, domestic violence related, going on at home. Or the other issue could possibly be, it's just somebody who's got an issue with that local house of worship that they feel like that's the only place they can take it out on. And that's unfortunate. And along with that, the mental health issue is the number two. So primarily you're looking at domestic violence, and you're looking at you're looking at mental health. Sometimes those are combined. More times than not, that is the majority of the issues and where they come from. If you want to talk about the reality of violence, let's do it. They are rare. They are very rare in houses of worship. But they will be dealing with robberies, rapes, murders, assaults, all kinds. There is individuals within this society today, they don't care if this is a house of worship. They don't care. Oh, they're going to be upset that God's going to be angry with. They don't care. They might go out there and they might commit some kind of a violent act at the local high school football game, go to a local bar on the street. Being it's some kind of a house of worship does not anymore seem to lend a safe place to be. If you have evil intentions, they will commit that evil act, does not matter where. That's the sad part about it. Of course, and as I already mentioned, they have a connection to this church, more times than not. And that's kind of as we kind of get into some of the security issues and some of the things that you look for, that'll be one of the things we talk about. Unfortunately, the most violent acts are shootings. Hands down. Why? I don't know. Is this the gun issue that we need to start creating laws and seizing guns? No, that's not the issue. We're not here to publicize the issue of firearms. More times than not, that violent act will have already been committed regardless. You had an incident just a few days ago. A gentleman was at a church, or at a hospital, and decided to take out his frustrations using a knife. Wasn't last year at a Christmas parade in some city, an individual decided to take their vehicle and they just drove right down the entire parade route, running over people. Are guns easily accessible? There's a lot of guns out there, yes. But this isn't an issue of who can and who cannot carry. This is not something that you can, no one's going to come out there and take your weapons from you. That is something that society as a whole is going to have to deal with. The government can't legislate this issue. This is an issue that might involve the mental health issue, but it also requires a lot of issue back home. What's going in this man or woman's family back home? What has caused them to do this? We seem to forget that a lot of times. I'm not sure what a normal family is anymore. I don't know. I was fortunate. I was brought up in a loving home. 2 parents that loved me, that would put the stick to me in a heartbeat if I stepped out of line. And it doesn't seem like that seems to be as much the case anymore. But that is an argument for another day. The last bullet here. Most of these locations, they were unprepared. That's always going to be the case. And this is what this presentation is going to be about. How are we going to better prepare ourselves? I would venture to say that the majority of you have some kind of preparedness at your homes. If you have an intruder, if you have an issue at home. Many of you have some kind of preparedness at your business. What about the churches? They seem to get kind of left out. Now, statistically showing, it's very rare when that happens, but when it happens, it's all over the place. We hear about it. And we have been watching multiple times all over this country, happening time and time again. Who is at risk? there is not that first house of worship that is immune to an issue like this. Not that first one. It's not going to be the issue of if this happens. It's going to be when. I've had issues within our local church back home. It was a slight domestic violence. It never went inside of the church. It stayed out in the parking lot. It was resolved very quickly. The parties were moved away. Parties moved on. It will happen. If it has not happened, it will, and I'm not here to frighten anybody, but we also have to look at the realistic side of this as well. But what can we do about it? And we're going to have it. Look at these. We're in a smaller church setting. I have seen and I've conducted these types of presentations to the smallest country, place of worship, to the largest mega church that you can possibly imagine. And the issues are still the same. Whether it's the small ones or the large ones, the only thing different is the structures. Now, I will tell you this. Churches, just like schools, they are a maze. The Sunday school buildings, all the hallways that open, you got doors on the right, you got doors on the left. We're going to get into that later on. But this is one of those challenges that you have not only with schools but with houses of worship. It's a maze in here. And we're going to discuss how your local law enforcement can come in here and talk about this. But let's talk about hardening the target. Now, I've had this slide for a while, and I've used the term hardening the target for quite a while. Recently, many of you have probably seen some of the local news outlets talk about hardening the target. I've already been there, and I've already done it. But that's okay. We got to do it. Simple steps you can make. But they come with some expense. It's expensive to do anything today. Anybody building a construction project back home had to go out and buy a 2x4? My word. It's ridiculous. Right here, let's harden some targets. Let's talk, and we're just going to utilize this structure that we have here today. Your door frames and your doors are only as good as the other component. There are doors, and I had a previous slide from another presentation. It was a great one. It was a very small door, very hollow door, and a dog chewed right through it. It was beautiful. He wanted something on the other side of the door, and it was just kind of a waffle cardboard kind of thing. He chewed right through that door. Well, that's not going to keep anybody out. If anybody wants to get in there, they're going to get in here. And let me just mention this to you right now, too. Having some kind of a security presence or a security plan at your locations, more times than not, will not stop the attack. Our job, we're going to minimize it. What can we do to slow that issue down? Attack might be a little bit more of an aggressive word, but what can we do as a society, as a church family, as we all worship in all these different locations around the country? What are we going to do to minimize the damage that's done? That's what we got to do. If a young man or young woman has that evil intention in their hearts, it's going to happen. But we can slow it down, we can slow the spread, and we can minimize it the best we can. As you can see, I personally, at my home, in my door frames and my doors, they're all thick, they're all hardy, and they're all well built. Taking 6-inch screws, if you got a wood frame, let's go to that next slide right there. Well, I'm going to throw them all up. There's your frame. A door is no better than the structure that's holding that door to the wall. Spend the time, spend the money, spend the efforts. I'm looking at some of the doors that we have here. They're metal frames. Great. But I've seen metal frame doors that have very small anchors that bolt into the side of the concrete. If you're going to have a good solid brick wall like we have here, and you got a good solid metal frame, take the time and insert those longer bolts deeper down into that concrete to hold the stuff. Same thing goes with the wood. If you got a frame, anchor those things. Get a very hardy frame, whether it be metal or wood. Good long anchors that penetrate that wood to hold that frame. back it up. A good solid door. I know these things are expensive. Those doors now are several $100s. But if you want to prevent any kind of issue from someone entering into that sanctuary, from someone entering into that area where the children have some kind of Sunday school, you're going to take the time. And you might have to do it a little bit at a time. We're going to do 2 or 3 doors a day, or two or three doors a year. I don't know what it's going to be. Just some simple ideas. Locks. I've gone into locations. You know what their lock was? The small little hook. You have the little eyelet and you kind of do that kind of thing. That was the lock. When you get inside, you can kind of throw that down. That's going to really hold off an intruder right there. But it's okay. We're simply sharing ideas right now. If you come from a location that has some stuff like that, great. Let's try to improve on it. Because you got to start thinking ahead, down the road, big picture. We got to start planning for that. Not the what if, but the when. And hopefully that when will be a minor event, not something that we've seen on the news across the country here lately. And of course, if you're going to connect all of that to the walls and all of that's going to be secure, do it the right way. Have the anchors. Have those things thick. Have them steel. Have them penetrate that door and the studs a good 6-8 inches. Is it going to prevent anyone from getting through? No. But the longer that individual has to sit there and kick that door and use that battering ram as his foot, that gives the rest of the individuals who are hearing that more time to respond to that location. It's simple. It's simply to minimize. You'll never prevent it. You got to minimize it the best you can. And the more racket that individual is using to try to get into that room, the more it allows more time for the cavalry to come and rescue the day. And I'm not sure who that cavalry is going to be, because that's going to be your decision. And we're going to share some of those ideas about what the cavalry is. Let's move on to that one. Ooh. How many have seen that? Pretty nice. They're not expensive. They will slow an intruder down. Simple. Put it on the inside portion of your door, and it's going to take long, but make sure that the frame is hardy. The anchors into the frame, into the walls are hardy. Make sure that door is hardy. If they're not as one good cohesive unit, you're wasting your time. These kind of little door jams are pretty easy. Some of them you actually can take them and they kind of stick onto the wall, onto the door itself. Don't put them in a back corner that you never see them anymore. When that incident happens and you hear something going on down the hallway, as we discuss some ideas and some different plans, that's great. Oh, someone's phone's ringing. We have it simple. The thing's right on the door. You see it every day, take it. It's pretty simple. You take one end, you jam it up underneath the door frame, and it has an extent and a big rubber foot. It will slow an intruder down. It will not prevent. But don't put it in the back closet. Don't forget about it. Have it seen. Practice it. And you say, well, that doesn't look like something we can practice. Practice it. I promise you, when the stress starts building, you get jittery. Practice what it is. Well, it's simple. You put it up on the door frame and you extend it and you put it down the floor. That's fine. Practice it. Be familiar with what that is. Be familiar with where it's at. Attach it to the door. Keep it somewhere on that wall. Because if it's anything like my closet, forget it. It is already buried in stuff that my kids have brought home from college. I don't know where the stuff's at. But it's just one more tool that you can utilize. That is an old bell. How many? I don't want to know. I hope that your different locations have some kind of an audible alarm, some kind of a panic alarm. There's many places around here, a lot of businesses that I personally know of, a bad guy or bad girl comes into the door to do something, they have some kind of ill intent, they hit a button. and every alarm you can possibly think of is screeching and wailing and hollering and lights are flashing. If that individual wants to commit some kind of evil intention to do something bad, they're not going to stay long. They want to leave. They want to get out of there. That's fine. Those things are inexpensive. You can put those things just about anywhere. Sound's going to drive the bad guys and the bad girls away. No one wants to hang around because all that has done now is brought attention to yourself. All these neat little bells and whistles that you have here they're tools. You could spend a fortune. You don't necessarily have to spend a fortune, but you need something. Think about that. Take that back home to the individuals at where you're at. But let's now talk about the human element. Now, I will say this. There are going to be some individuals representing different houses of worship here today that will do nothing. Just telling you. Yes, sir.
Can we back up just a second?
Sure.
Regarding the doors,
Uh-huh.
in regards to the fire marshal and OSHA, where it's an enter-exit door,
Mhm.
similar to that one right there, where you have a push to go
Right.
out, but you have this lock from the outside, either with a key or a keypad.
Mhm.
But in our particular case, you punch in the numbers, but if something occurs, you have to open the door to punch the numbers back in to lock the door.
Right.
Is there a system or plan where you can put a a barrier or a slide mechanism on the inside of the door so you won't have to go back on the outside to turn the key? Or just leave doors locked?
Well, you don't want to... Okay. The question basically was what the type of door you have. We have a lot of OSHA regulations. We got a lot of issues and rules and procedures with the fire marshal's office on what kind of door you can have. The newer door is similar to what we have here. It's a panic bar. It can lock from the outside, but, well, technically I guess you can lock it from the inside with an Allen wrench, but obviously someone on the outside, they can't get in. But we have an issue in here. Push the bar, the door automatically opens, and out you go. If this is something that, and of course we have other doors that are out there that are older, that you would never be able to come in on the inside of that door. If we're inside, we can't put any kind of a piece of wood across it to prevent anybody from getting in. The fire marshal will frown upon that in a big way. I can assure you that. But then again, let's keep in mind too, there's nothing wrong with a panic bar on any of your doors. Now, granted, you can situate that kind of a door that if that was a hallway and people were coming into that hallway and coming into the classroom that we have here, you can have that door basically locked in the open position. So anybody on the outside who wants to come in, they can just open the door and come in here. But you can in turn around and lock that door as well, so the panic bar basically protrudes out. And you got to then in turn hit the panic bar to open it up. So you can adjust the door to make it lock, to keep it locked from the outside, or keep it unlocked from the outside or whatever. You can adjust the doors that way. But what I would strongly recommend, contact your local fire marshal. Contact those individuals. Here's what we got. This is what our church, house of worship, whatever, this is the presence that we have. This is what we want to do. And let them come in and give you some good suggestions. And just let them know you're there to beef up the security aspect of that structure, and this is what we want to do. And they'll gladly give you some ideas that will easily fit, that will provide ample security and much, much longer time for them to penetrate that door and keep everybody safe and still be in line with the fire marshal. So you don't get dinged as far as your fire insurance or anything like that goes. Definitely. Good question. Thank you. All right, here we are with the human element. Let's talk about it a little bit. I mentioned, and it's going to happen. There's going to be some individuals, some locations in this room that people will go back to. You will not implement any type of security plan. Happens. It is a fact. I hope everybody will, but it won't. Because a security plan, by its nature, is inconvenient. It's inconvenient. I have individuals where I attend my church. There have individuals in this room that attend different worship services. And you have individuals that are out there that, well, I don't want that door to be locked during church hours because I always go through that door. I see some giggles. You know who I'm talking about. I've always come through this door during this time of worship, whatever. If your security plan says, well, this door is going to be locked from the outside, but that door won't. Well, I've always come through this door. It's coming. I've seen some giggles. You get it. That will be some of the stronger arguments that you have at home as you prepare for strengthening your security plan. That will be one of the issues. I've always come through that door. I've always done this. I've always done that. It's coming. Get ready for it. Unfortunately, that will prevent some individuals from creating some kind of a viable security plan. But that's okay. I'm just telling you right now. I wish you the best of luck. I'm here for you in any way, shape, or form. You can contact me anytime. But some of the challenges you will have will be with individuals within your own congregation. Because we are creatures of habit. We do not like change. And a security plan is an inconvenient plan. As I mentioned just a minute ago, by its nature, they're inconvenient. But that's what makes a true security plan like it is. When you enter courthouses, one of the things that the sheriff is mandated to do is have a court security plan. You won't go through, you're not going to find every door at the sheriff or at the courthouse open. Well, that's because you can't. There's certain plans and there's certain ways of doing stuff, and some doors will remain locked, some will remain open. You'll have deputies at this location and this location where everybody funnels into. You need to kind of have that same thought process at our houses of worship everywhere. Here we go. Obviously, leadership should have some kind of a basic plan when dealing with, these security issues. Of course, what are our plans going to cover? Something dealing with a disruption of your service, violence, natural disasters, medical emergencies, any type of allergic reactions, missing children. All of these things need to be encompassed into your plan, not just an active shooter situation. The active shooter situations, as I mentioned, they're rare. You're going to have more issue with natural disasters, medical emergencies, allergies. By the just a raise of hand, who in here is allergic to something that crawls on the ground that can bite you or can fly around in the air and that can bite you? There's things out there that we don't like. How are you prepared for it? What are you going to do if one of your children disappears in the Sunday school building? Might not be an issue, a major issue. The child might have gone down to use the restroom. Or somebody might have taken that child. You might have a domestic violence issue. The father can't get certain amount of visitation with it, whatever. We've had it before. A father and or a mother will come up and take that child. It happens. So all of these are things that you want to consider when dealing with it. So have a variety of plans. And that's going to be something that you did. But of course, these are just some ideas. But they're very solid, and your foundational portion of your security plan needs to include at least those and how you're going to deal with them. Who's going to be in charge of your plan? You need to have a security team, but keep in mind too, you need one person in charge. Delegate that authority. I don't know who that's going to be. You probably have some ideas of some individuals within your places of worship of who would be some good individuals, who would be the one to be in charge of that. But you need one. But then delegate that authority down. Command and control experience. current law enforcement. I have no doubt that many of our houses of worship in this city has a law enforcement officer that is a member of that congregation. Do you have any individuals that are in the military, retired military? Those would be good. Do they have to have law enforcement experience or military experience? No. Are they a good leader? Is that man or woman a truly well thought out, smooth, casual thinker and can think very cool and very deliberate under pressure? That's who we need to have this plan. But the plan doesn't need to fall on one person. That plan is just the tip of the iceberg. Now you need to build the team around that individual. All right, this is going to be fun. You need to conduct some kind of a security assessment of that location, this building. And of course, I see you got different hallways and different portions of the buildings on this property. Where is it vulnerable? Work with your local sheriff's office. And I'm going to do it here. Of course, the sheriff's back here and a bunch of the sheriff's staff. How many, is there a coffee pot probably here and in some of your different houses of worship? Of course there are. There's probably some Coca-Colas and some Pepsis and stuff. Locate and periodically invite your sheriff, your other law enforcement agencies in this community. Have them come by. Open house anytime you want. Now, I will tell you this, in the law enforcement community, donut is a pretty derogatory term. So we want to call them power rings. But have some power rings at somewhere in your office. Encourage your law enforcement officers to come by. Let them see that location. Let them walk around and see it. Let them get a power ring. Let them get a cup of coffee, a glass of water. Walk them around the building. Let them see what that facility is like. And your sheriff and your local law enforcement, they'll assist you. They'll be glad to. Because I can assure you one thing, they want to kind of get an idea of what that structure looks like on the inside. A church facility, other houses of worship, schools, it's a maze. Hallways and buildings, they're everywhere. But figure out that, and then once you kind of get a good assessment, start with planning your guidelines of how you're going to deal with that, starting with your greeters on down. Yes?
At some point in your presentation,
Sure.
if you can, without interrupting your flow, give us some idea, because there's an elephant in the room that needs to be put on the floor at some point. Mm-hmm. And that is, there's a lot of, there's a lot of killings that's going on with our young people. And sometimes their funerals are at our churches. Mm-hmm. And then the opposite gang, or some of them, will show up. And they might have guns on them.
You're right.
And even if they don't shoot on the inside, it's possible that they could shoot outside or even at the cemetery.
Yep.
So what should pastors be looking out for in those cases when we know we are allowing the funeral of a young man who might have been involved with a gang? And you got 2 gangs probably showing up at that funeral, maybe 3.
What we will do, I'll address that right now. I mean, it's in some of the slides in the back, and some of it kind of overlaps, but it's a very good question. Gangs are prevalent everywhere. It's just not, it's not a big city, small city. They're everywhere. I was recently in Utah, in a small city, and guess what? We got little gangs that run around in that, cause mischief, problems. Some are in prison. They have guns. But in reference to your question dealing with the issue of gangs and the issue of funerals, your security plan should have multiple layers to it. Now, if you know you have a funeral and you have a death and you're in the process of having a funeral for the individual and the family, contact your local law enforcement. It has happened once. It's happened twice. It will continue to happen. Gangs don't care that they're going to ride by a funeral and throw bullets into the crowd. They don't care. They have no concern about that. But what can you do? Yeah, you'll need a law enforcement presence. And unfortunately, it's getting to that point. Contact your sheriff, contact your local police department, advise them this is a deal, this is what we got. We're having a funeral for this individual. There's going to be a lot of family members around. This individual, who is a gang member, is probably going to have some of his gang member friends attending as well. And out of the abundance of caution, I would like some kind of a law enforcement presence to at least be there. And work with your local law enforcement, and they will be glad to assist you and give you some suggestions of what we can do to prevent that. Because I can assure you, a lot of times the bad guys and the bad girls out there are kind of like the cockroaches. They don't like the light. They don't like the attention. If you get some people out there and around, they won't get near you. Not all the time. But if they know that there's going to be an issue like that, a funeral, you're going to have some gang-related issues going on, and there's nobody around, it doesn't look like there's any kind of a security presence, it'll happen just like it's happened multiple times. You'll have some people drive by, and they just start shooting. Well, explain the sense in that other than just the evil in their hearts. They're not, they're hoping maybe they can hit some of the the gangbangers' friends. But instead, they just start spraying the crowd. So yes, having a security presence, having multiple layers of security will assist in that. If you can catch that further out that you can, good. So reach out to your local law enforcement. See what they can't do to come in and assist that, because it's happened before, and you're right. Will it happen again? Absolutely, it will. Unfortunately, the breakdown of many of the families in this community being society we live in, sometimes that gang is the family. They might not have a mom and dad they might not have the stability that they normally have, but they do within that gang. Good question. And feel free, we'll stop and we'll go into that, no problem at all. But dealing with a security assessment, now this slide kind of lost its favor, the side of it. Work with your local law enforcement. See if they would not hang on to a security plan or some kind of a floor plan of your building. They may or they might not. See about your local fire department if they want to do it as well. I can assure you, if you get your local law enforcement who come by here and take part in a power ring and a cup of coffee, and somebody within church leadership just walks them around the building. Let them see how this thing, as you can see, it's a maze. And one thing that in the law enforcement community, they deal with things like this every single day. The SWAT teams, the SRT teams, the men and women who are tactically astute to go in here and do this. The more that you know about the layout of that structure, the better chances are that it will be a good outcome, not only for the law enforcement officers who are basically lining up and stacking up to enter that building, but for the individuals in there that are causing the problems. A good day is when everybody can go home fine and safe. Let them see this. So on the occasion, one day where you have something going on, your deputies, your law enforcement officers, your local fire, they're familiar with this. Okay, I remember that. They go down that hallway and they got 5 doors to the right. The more they know about that, the better off it's going to be. It's going to be good stuff. Takes me to that training. That training is alert. Advanced Law Enforcement Rapid Response Training. Really good. Any of our law enforcement officers in here, have they been involved in some of that? Oh, you got to do it. I'm one of the things that my boss has assured me to do is start looking forward and looking outward, trying to locate some alert training for you. It is great training. This is some training that I conducted with some of our CHAMPS instructors 2 years ago. These guns are almost real. They shoot a small paint pellet at a very high velocity. It looks like a real bullet, and it is. It's got a primer, it's got a powder charge, and it shoots a small little paintball at you. And when you get hit by it, you know it. That's why they're wearing all this garb. Day one of this training, it's all about how to move down that hallway safely, because this group right here, these men and women, they are a cohesive unit. As you can see, we got these group here, they're facing forward. You got individuals in the back. That's the back of the helmet. They're stacked up, so these individuals in the back, they're watching for any threat that might be coming in from behind them. And in this training, we had simulated bad guys in certain rooms. And these individuals, day one, are taught to stack, how to move as a cohesive unit, and they go after the shooter. And then, of course, day two is when you put it all in action. I was shot. I was the bad guy. And it hurts. But these people, that training is fantastic. And if a facility like this or a facility like a school where you have multiple rooms down a hallway, see if you can't volunteer and give up some of that training time for your local law enforcement. The worst it's going to do is leave a little paintball a little spatter on your wall, you wipe it off. Or let them wipe it off if they're going to use your thing. Security recommendations here. Oop. Hang on. Forgot my stuff. Surveillance. How many have a camera system? How many have a video system? How do you have that kind of stuff? The more you can see, the better off you are. But one of the things you got to do is if you have a solid camera system, it will preserve that evidence. You might have an incident that happens right here, right now, after hours, that you were not, that it's just an after hours issue. Or you might have an issue right here during this service that we're having. Things are hectic. The video system is capturing it. That video system also saves that information. So you might have an idea, wait, I think that was John Doe and Jane Doe who did that. That video system it preserves that evidence that you can turn around and use it for prosecution and criminal charges at a later time. It helps. There are so many computer systems and so many surveillance systems, there's no telling how many times we have been recorded today through our normal activities. Probably in the hundreds. Going to a store, going to the Winn-Dixie, going to the get your lunch, driving to and from home, the Ring doorbell systems that you think no one knows. Well, yeah, it's a Ring doorbell system. We've seen all kinds of neat, funny videos, people walking outside and sliding down on ice, the dog chewing up the UPS guy or girl, chasing them out down with the packages. We are picked up on video all the time. It is not common if you have any kind of an issue in a local neighborhood. Local law enforcement investigators will turn around and say, let's kind of canvass that area. Let's find out who has Ring doorbells, because it's very possible that even though it happened down here, they had to drive this way, right in the view of somebody's Ring doorbell 10 doors or 10 houses down. We're on video all the time, and it's going to get even more prevalent. It's coming. Don't worry about it. Ushers. Here's where we start. Multiple layers of security. This is key. This is important. Your greeters, your ushers, all your staff, they need to know what they need to do. Even if it's simply calling 911. One of the things that they actually teach you during your CPR training, where you got the big dummies and you start the chest compressions, their job will also say, sir, I need you to call 911. Because if everyone's saying, oh my gosh, and call 911, well, you think you did it, and you think you did it, and you think you did it. No, I need you to call 911 right now. We're going to deal with this. Even if you have one individual in that church security, in that plan, their job is to call 911 when an issue happens. Video systems, we've already talked about it. Who's out there watching the parking areas? It's a good idea. Have one of your outer layers of security watch those parking layers, watch those parking areas, watch all those little nooks and crannies, because it happens every single time. I guarantee you in this city, on a Sunday, someone comes out from their worship and their car's been broken into. It happens. You get out here and the tires are gone. You get out here, well, I hope my tires are, it's not hard for someone to throw a rock through a window and steal a bag. But let's be smart. Put your bag with you. Put your bag under the seat. but have those multiple layers on the outside that are meandering around, that watch what's going on. Have that outer layer that does that. We all live in communities more times than not that are smaller, so you know who your local people are. And we're creatures of habit. We're like, looks like a nice couple just showed up at church. We've never seen them before. And what do? You watch them. I do. I watch them. Yes, sir. Mm-hmm. Okay.
What I do whenever I go, make sure to have the local number to the law enforcement where you can call them directly also, not just calling 911.
Okay. That is where, and I'm glad you mentioned that. One of my notes in my slide, we're going to mention that right now. Every phone in this location, every phone in your house of worship, in yours, wherever you're at, every phone that's on the inside, have a note card. Have it laminated. And have on it, my name is whatever. And have the number to the 911 or whatever the non-emergency number is. Because you're right. You call, sometimes you'll say call star GSP, and you might be calling a county that's 5 counties away, but within that GSP area. Call that number. Have the number handy. I'm at this phone. Yes, my name is Brent Leffler. My address is such and such and such and such. And I've heard shots, and the shots are down the hallway here. But have one of those, because when the things start happening and adrenaline starts kicking in, you forget stuff. Have that card with you at every single phone, and that phone might say, like I said, it's going to say, what's my name? Well, my name's such and such, and here's where I'm at, and I'm at such and such church, such and such house of worship, such and such school, and here's what the address is. And I am in and of course have it, you are at the phone at the main lobby entrance. Have that kind of stuff. And the card needs to stay there. And I might be in where I worship. I might be in the very back of the property. My name is Brent Leffler. I am at the J.O. Smith Activities Building. And I'm in the kitchen using the phone in the kitchen area. And I've heard shots coming from the Sunday school area. Because when the 911 operators, they need that information. So when you're calling, you stay on that phone. And you stay there and you hook, because they have to have information as much as they can, whether you have a lot of information or not. Because at the same time, somehow they can type and talk at the same. I'm amazed by how that works. They type and talk, all that kind of stuff. They are the lifeline to the law enforcement officers that are responding. If I'm responding to some kind of an issue, I want as much information as I can get. In my local community, I know where our church is. I know where the J.O. Smith building is. I know where the Sunday school building is. So I'm hearing shots from the Sunday school building. I'm focusing on what I need to do and where I need to be. But stay there. But have little name cards, little laminated cards. My name is. I am at the. The address here is. I've heard just so, but that's where it stays. Because they're going to call, because you might not even be from that. You might be a relative. And it might be some kind of a worship Sunday lunch. And if I'm not from that location, well, I can say, okay, well, this is my name, and I'm calling from this, and I'm at this location, done. But make sure as a security team, you make sure that information is there. Make sure that the cards stay there. Don't let them become a notepad for somebody else. All right, some more. You need to be visible at any kind of an issue. When things happen, you need to become visible and start showing up and taking into consideration all these things. What are you going to do? And your plan is going to be that. Do we get involved? Do the security team members stand up and start moving towards the threat and try to kind of move that disruptor out of the area? Yeah. What kind of training are we going to have as the church security team? You need to practice this. Invite somebody from another church. You're going to be the bad guy. And we're going to practice it. I thought it was fascinating. The TSA put out an interesting video of how flight attendants are trained dealing with all these unruly passengers. Oh, wow. All the hollering and screaming that they are patient, but they train on how to deal with all these disruptors who are oftentimes drunk, oftentimes irritated because their flight got canceled not once, twice, but 100 times. They've lost all their bags. But practice it and be patient with it and conduct it. Train and train and train some more. In reference to security cameras, you pay for what you get. Make sure the quality is there, so when they need to take this video clip of the incident that happened in this room and send it out there to, utilizing Crime Stoppers, who out there has seen this person? There's some camera systems out there that are just as grainy. I mean, it's like you just go to the beach and throw a bunch of sand on top of it. And then there are some that really have some quality stuff. So take a good look at your video systems and see about upgrading it. Because if you want to find the bad girl and bad guy who did whatever, if you want to capture good video or capture good stills, it depends on what you have and the quality that you have. So take a look at that when you get back home. Take a look at your systems. All right, some of these things down here, let's talk about it. Have a team. Put a team together. How large is that team? I don't know. That's you. But have a team. You need multiple people. If you got a threat, you got someone who's going to be disrupting services, you're going to have an individual. Check with your insurance company at your house of worship. See what they need. See what kind of requirements they might need of you. You might have to increase your policy for whatever reason, but check in with your insurance company to do that. Now, what kind of a security team are you going to need? I don't know. You're going to have to figure that out. I'm always of the influence, the more I can have, the better. The more I can have, the better. If I got one or two disruptors, I want 15, 20, 30 people standing up saying, we're going to deal with this. There's force in numbers. And have it, how are you going to do it? And practice together. One of the things we've got here, if you need specific training, contact your local law enforcement. Contact your sheriff. Say, Sheriff, how do you do this? What can we do to better serve our needs here? What can we do here? You've already been here. You've conducted an assessment. You've come back. You said, these are some strengths here. These are some weaknesses here. Ask them, additional questions. They can put you in touch with additional resources to provide you, additional training. But practice what it is. If you have an issue, as I mentioned before, not all of your emergency-related things are going to be disruptors. You might have a tornado drill. What are you going to do? And talk with your congregation. Say, look, we're going to have a practice session on Tuesday night. We're going to be here at 6 o'clock, and we get as many people here. No one's going to get shot. No one's going to get killed, but we just want to practice with our security team how we can move this congregation from point A to point B. It might be a weather-related incident. And I'm not sure here, of course, obviously, tornadoes, don't want to be places with windows, but on the other side of this building, you might have an interior hallway. We're going to practice. We're going to see how quickly we can get this group moved from here to there and how this security team can help make that happen. Practice those kind of things. And hopefully you can have some kind of a big covered dish supper and everybody will bring something to eat. That would be always good. But practice those events. Talking about some other things here. Oop, turned it on. How are you going to communicate with your people? If you can't communicate, you're just dead in the water. How are you going to communicate? You can go by the local Walmart store and get some of those small little Motorola radios. You can get a pack, or go to the Bass Pro Shop and get a pack of 6 for about $100. How are you going to communicate? Because if you can't, then don't have a team. Because if you're going to be on opposite ends of a property, or you're going to have one individual in the child care Sunday school room and you're going to have 2 others in a larger sanctuary, you got to talk. Whether you have an intercom system, whether you have text messages, whether you use your cell phones, whether you just get the cheaper radios. We're not saying that you got to go in here and buy the high dollar stuff that your law enforcement officers and your local EMS and fire units have, but you've got to have something that you can communicate and get people from point A to point B. Because if I'm point B and I can't communicate with the people that are in point A, and I know the cavalry's in point A, that's kind of a sad feeling. You're just going to sit there and wonder, hopefully someone's going to wander by. Child care. How are you going to lock it down? Do you have procedures in place? Good idea. How are you going to lock such things down? If you've got to lock down the Sunday school building that has maybe the nursery in it or the room that holds the 4- and 5-year-old kids, how are you going to do it? How are you going to notify the parents? Think about these kind of things. If you've got to lock it down, figure out how you're going to notify the parents, because the parent, what is a parent going to do? I'm going to do the same thing. We got an issue in here. I've got to get to my child over there. That's 2 hallways away. You got to make sure that your plan can be articulated to the church, to the house of worship, to the group. In this instant, this is what's going to happen. If we have an issue that's dealing with this, your children are going to be fine. We're going to lock those kids down. We're going to be fine. We're going to get the congregation here. We're going to move everyone out here. But everyone's got to know. So in all honesty, a security team is important. But there's many aspects of a security plan that your individuals, and the men and women within the ranks of that, that worship service, they need to know. In the event of this kind of thing, this is what's going to happen. My child will be fine. But I've got to do this, and I got to do this. Your church family, they need to know. They need to be privy to some of those aspects of what's going on. And your church, of course, and your security team, better be able to communicate it. But you need to be able to articulate within your security team what happens. Who's going to lock down the doors on the north hallway, the south hallway, the east hallway? And I don't know. But you know the confines and the locations and how your room and how your property is set up. And you're going to have, this is one of those things you're going to have to figure out. How are we going to lock that place down? What are we going to call it? Don't come up with a lot of creative words. This is going to be the Alpha hallway, and this is going to be the Bravo hallway. Common sense words. I need somebody in the 3-year-old Sunday school or the 3-year-old nursery. We got to lock down the middle school Sunday school building. Use common language. Because then you're going to say, okay, Alpha. What's the Alpha hallway? I don't know what the Alpha hallway is. Yes, sir.
Remember that we don't exclude the children.
Yeah.
Don't exclude the children out of the plan too, because they can actually be some of your first alerts.
No, and you're right. So as many eyes you can put on something, the better it is. But how are you going to deal with child care? They're important. How are you going to lock them down? How are you going to move them? If you got an active shooter situation, it's better. And depending on the structure, some of these structures are immense. It might be fine if you got kids on the far end of this place. Move them, get them out of there, and move them out. Or if it's a smaller facility, lock it down. And how are you going to lock it down? Change your doors, change your locks. Change the screws, change the structure, harden that location to prevent things like that from coming in. And how are you going to lock it down? There's all kinds of ways, and you've got to make sure that just your security team can communicate to know what they got to do. If security team has 15 people in it, I'm going to lock down the child care area, or I'm going to lock down the Sunday school building. Well, maybe it's my responsibility with John Doe and Jane Doe, the security team. When that's happening, we stay there. We stay at child care. The rest respond to wherever the incident's at. Divide them up and move them towards wherever that disruption's coming from. And have do with that. More check-in system for child care. This is expensive. People are going to say, "Well, our church, we know everybody." I know we know everybody. We would never do this kind of thing. A church that my brother goes to in Metro Atlanta, they have little wristbands. When a parent comes and drops off little John or little Susie or little whoever, they get a wristband, the parent gets a wristband. You come back and you match up, make sure the wristbands are good, so you do that. I get it. Some locations, they're just massive. You don't know everybody. But a lot of times we come from places we know everybody. The strangers stick out like sore thumbs. But it's a possibility. It's something that you need to do. But at the same time, whoever might be working in this child care area, it's very vital to know that if you have a member of your congregation that might be going through an ugly divorce, your child care people need to know that. Because if John Doe has been some kind of an order from the court that John Doe cannot have any connection to their child, and the child is left off at daycare, well, John Doe's going to go by, yeah, I need to pick up my son. Yeah, sure. That care worker has no clue that there's any kind of a court order. There's no domestic violence issue. They need to know. So they'll know that they don't want to accidentally give their child away. Now, they put this child in danger? Maybe, maybe not. Most of the times not. You know, the fight's between the mom and the dad. The dad or the mom just can't see their son every so often. I'm going to take my son and have a few hours with him or whatever. The parents, the daycare people need to be as in tune to any kind of issues in that church as well, of who can and can't see their son or their daughter. How many people in this church, hopefully a lot of these individuals are church leadership. When you hire somebody, do you do background checks on them? You should. Do it. Do a background check. Find out who they are, what they've done. And we're not prying. I've had to take a background check to get into my job. I've had multiple background checks before. I just want to make sure that they know that I'm not the hatchet murderer 1 in 5 states away. But as part of that, if I'm going to be a member of your house of worship and I'm going to be responsible for driving your kids, do I have a valid license? Am I capable of driving? Has it been suspended for umpteen DUIs? You need to know. Yes, sir.
Should a background check be done on those that are serving in the ministry, especially in the children's area, financial area? Should a background check be done for those that are serving in the ministry? Financial area, the children's area, the teens area, should a check be made?
I would,
even if they've been a member for 50 years.
Yeah, I would. If they're going to be in any kind of a leadership position, responsible for things within that house of worship. Children are awesome. I mean, those are valuable. The money side of it is valuable. Yeah, make sure that they know that. I'm going to mention this now because it's a few slides over. Who's got a key control system? Does everybody and their uncle have a key? Have a key control. Who's got the keys? You might have had 15 or so pastors in this position. The church could be, or the other, whatever the structure is, very well might have been 70 years old. When was the last time the locks were changed? Who's got the keys to those things? You might have to rein them in and say, all right, new locks, new doors, right now, effective immediately. And the church staff is going to have them, and the church, we're going to give it to this person, and it's going to be notated, okay, this person has it, and this person has it. Who's got the combination to the alarm system? Okay? Well, this person has it, and this person has it. Change it periodically. A key is great, but if, I can get around here and, kick in the door, but then automatically somehow get inside and shut the alarm system, because that's how it happens in our system. At my office, you got to unlock the door, get inside, and shut the alarm down. If someone is just determined and they want to destroy that front door, that side door, and get into the side of that church, then, well, fine. Then the alarm goes off, the little beep goes off like it's supposed to, and you go in and knock off your alarm system, and you're able to go do whatever you want to do. So, do it. But security systems and background checks, driver's history checks, yes. Yes, sir.
Just a little bit on the security system that you mentioned. Key control, we had a big problem with that. We had people going in and out of the church and didn't have any accountability. And once I took over, we upgraded the system, whereas the security system now, we give each individual a 4-digit code, and then it texts us the name of the person that is
Good.
going in and out of the church, whether they're armed or disarmed.
Good.
And it's been a great help.
Good.
It helps control and know who's in the church and who's not.
Well, and it's a great, I'm glad that's working for you, but at the same time, it's not necessarily, it's the kind of thing, well, we're keeping an eye on you. It's also a kind of, it's a liability issue. That if you had an individual that was in church by themselves and you've not heard from them, or what's going on, or was that person assaulted or attacked in any kind of way? I mean, now you got a record of when that individual came in, what time that normally person leaves, that person that leaves, someone else came in somewhere else. So this isn't always the kind of case that you're going after the threat. It's to protect the church home, the house of worship's home, and the membership that's part of it. I'll show you this quick slide just to kind of show how this is in a Dollar General store. It's just a picture. Tell you how kind of crazy people are. Somebody came into that store and was trying to abduct a child from the mother in the store. So now the child is being like the tug-of-war rope. The mom's pulling, the bad guy's pulling. People are that desperate sometimes. They will go to lengths to say, I'm going to snatch this kid. I'm going to snatch this. I'm going to do that. I'm going to steal that. Look at me. What are we seeing on the news? People just walk into stores and they just start taking things off the shelf. Now, let's go into the local drugstore and we're just going to get a bag and scoop stuff in. Welcome to the world. A couple more things. Medical emergencies. We've already talked about it. This is a big. You got doctors, you got nurses, you got emergency medical people within the confines of your church. Do you have a first aid kit? Is your first aid kit up to date? Is your first aid kit so old that the bandage, little plastic wrappers just fall apart and the bandage is in there? I get it. I know. I've seen ours at our church before. Update that stuff. Update it. It's very possible you could go to your local healthcare clinic or your local hospital or your local whatever and say, we're trying to get this. Can we have a handful of Band-Aids and a few gauze pads over here? They very well want, it's like I don't know, like trick or treating here. Just throw stuff in it, but have a first aid kit and know how to use it. Know where it's at. Who's got an AED? Automatic, the defibrillator machines. They're important. Keep it charged. If you don't charge it, it's worthless. And I mentioned in the other, know how to use it. You very well could get one donated to you from your community. But you have to have an understanding of how it works. They're not that difficult, plus if you pay attention to it, the newer ones, it tells you exactly what to do. Do this, do this, do this. The pads will go here. The other pad will go here. Push the button if this happens. Push the button if this happens. And, of course, by this time, EMS, they're on their way getting to you. You're just there trying to make sure that this person is staying alive. What about the kids? Who's got diabetes? Who's allergic to this? Who's allergic to bee stings, wasp stings, scorpion bites? I mean, we live in Georgia. There's everything crawls on the ground or flies in the air, bites you. What is it that these kids can and can't tolerate? Ask the mom. Have an idea. What's their list of allergies? Okay, fine. If we get stung by a bee, that's one thing. But I've got an allergic reaction to peanuts. Fine. Someone within the church needs to know that Susie and Johnny and David have peanut allergies. Your youth workers need to know that. And if something happens, how are they going to do? Make sure that your staff is trained on some of the basic stuff dealing with medical emergencies. All right, security, talking about, obviously, we're going to control our access points. We're going to talk about the convenient word again. There it is, the convenient word. That's going to be one of the issues that you deal with. I don't like this security plan because I got to walk an extra 40 feet to the door. I've already had that argument in my church. I've always come in that door. And I'm saying this picking on myself and my own church. You got it. It's all a bunch of people giggle earlier. You know it. You live it too. Who has the keys? Who doesn't have the keys? If key control has gotten out of hand, fine. Contact your local locksmith. Have them rekey it. And say, I got 10 keys and I'm going to keep 2 here. I got 1 and these people are going to have 1. Go ahead and let the church know. Oh, and by the way, We have changed the locks. Key control's gotten out of hand. The keys, anyone who has them, don't work anymore. And some people might get snooty. Let them. This is security is for your house of worship, which is not, it's for the men and women and the children that are part of that house of worship. And key control is security. There are a lot of semi kind of bad guys. Oh, it's locked. I'm going to go down the street. If they want in, they're going to kick in. This is always a good one. Lighting, the shrubbery. Y'all, I've actually did an assessment at a church that the shrubbery on the outside was taller than the windows where the wall was. You had the exterior wall, you had windows, come about this far out, you had 4 or 5 feet, and these monster bushes. A bad guy could sit between the bushes and that wall and break into every window that he wanted to and steal anything that they wanted to. Take those bushes and put a chainsaw to them and cut them down low. So as people, it's visible, you can see it. I mean, it's great to have pretty bushes wherever you want them, but some locations you don't need them. You want to cut it down, you want to put ample lighting in there, you want to keep the shrubbery kind of nice and trimmed. It can still look pretty, but something that, a bad guy or girl can't hide behind. Do that kind of stuff. Have exit lights that work. Have motion detector lights that work. Oh, that light usually works, but it doesn't work now. Well, get a ladder. Have one of your young strapping members of your community come in there and get a ladder and fix it. But things of value, it's a church. You don't really need cash. If you have a voucher system and you got somebody who comes in and they're down on their luck, as the house of worship, we're there for them. Don't keep money there and say, well, here's $50 and there's a comfort suites down there. Have a deal with your local churches. Your local houses of hotels and stuff. Have a voucher system. Well, here's a voucher system, and you go down there, and I'm going to call, and I'm going to say that John Doe is coming in with voucher 123, and he's good for one night stay. And then they turn around and build a church, build a synagogue, build the house of worship, whatever it is. Don't keep cash. This isn't the day of old, where you had solid gold this and solid gold that. Well, you thought so. Everybody here, the St. Augustine Roman Catholic Church in Brooklyn the other day? This big, gigantic thing, jewels, gold, worth $2 million. Somehow this big thing folds in front of it to hide it during the day or during the night. $2 million. This thing's floating around in the church. No problem, bad guys or somebody, we don't know. They came into the back of the behind this thing, and they cut it, and they cut it, and they cut it, and they grabbed that thing, and they walked out the door. They don't know who did it. They're still working on it. Now, I'm not going to say they did. I don't know. That's what they did. But now they're missing this thing that every worship service, this big thing rolls around and it's visible and they do what they do with it. But now they don't have one. And it's worth over $2 million. Now, I don't know how you get rid of something like that. Maybe cut it in little pieces and sell it off a little piece at a time. I don't know what you do with that. I'm not going to begin to start figuring out how that works. But here's the part about it. It's the tabernacle. It's solid 18-karat gold covered in jewels and valued around $2 million. And this is what the priest or the bishop said. To know that a burglar entered the most sacred space of our beautiful church and took great pains to cut into a security system is a heinous act of disrespect. That sounds great coming from the leader of that church. The people who stole it could care less that they stole it from that house. Well, it was from the Catholic Church. They could care less. I don't care. I don't care about God. I'm just going to steal this $2 million thing. But don't get to well, they're not going to do that because this is a house of worship. Don't become so naive. bad things happen in the houses of worship. Bad thing happens in people's homes and in hospitals and wherever. But we gotta stay alert and deal with our time. Disruptors, simple, isolate and remove them. A house of worship, you have the right to remove disruptive individuals. Yes, you do. You can remove them. If they're getting out of hand, you can remove them. Don't think, well, I got to just put up with it. No, you don't. But I would make sure I would communicate, be very articulate to these individuals that they're trespassing, that they need to leave. If they refuse to leave, obviously, have your security team isolate this individual. Definitely call 911. Have law enforcement en route to that location to assist in removing this individual and get this individual gone or these individuals gone. You can make them go away. If possible, put yourself between them and the individuals of that congregation. If possible, maybe move the congregation to another location. Remember this, we are there for the security of the individuals that are worshiping. We don't mean any ill will or harm towards these individuals who are causing problems, but you can remove them. Don't think you got to sit there and take it. You don't have to. Keeping the disruptors out. Utilize your outer perimeter of security, the people that are out there kind of watching the parking lots and kind of watching what's going on. If you see an issue, you notify the other security members. They can go outside. They can stop this issue before it ever gets in. And the courts, once again, have already held that houses of worship have the right to prevent individuals from entering the building. Don't say, well, I don't know if I just don't know. Well, now you got a worse problem because now he's in your house of worship. You can prevent that man or that woman from getting in there. And do it. Practice it. Practice it. Put your team together. Have your team work in conjunction. Have your outer security perimeter. Have your inner have everybody work in conjunction. Practice it. Practice it. You say, okay, John Doe, you're going to be our strange individual who's kind of walking around the parking lots looking at stuff during the day, and I'm going to have my outer perimeter find you, locate you. We're going to contact security, and we're going to kind of isolate you, and we're going to kind of move you out of the way. There's been many times, y'all, that I've never had to actually handcuff a person. I was actually able to talk them right into my car. It's what you say. Okay? But then again, it's how you say it. You can do that kind of stuff. Just be gentle, firm, and things like that can happen. We've already talked about they can do it. How are you going to respond to transients? And here's some suggestions. Obviously, we know we want to help the poor. We're talking about the welfare, the needy, and of course, the mental health issue in this state is ridiculous. But just as ridiculous in this country. Mental health system is broken. And we have to get these individuals. Right now, the sheriffs of Georgia are the #1 mental health care provider in the state. The state is shutting down facilities left and right. It is the sheriffs of Georgia who are the #1 health care provider. And a lot of these individuals that are roaming the streets, to no fault of their own, they need help. Having them in a jail is not where they need to be. And the sheriffs are fully aware of that, and they don't want that. They need them gone. And there's the community services are what can help these individuals. But we've got to bolster that up. Okay, obviously, make sure your staff members are trained. There are a lot of things that you could one of the law enforcement trainings that we have to do in one of the required courses is called de-escalation for the law enforcement officers. Well, maybe reach out to your local law enforcement. Reach out to your sheriff. See if they can't sit in on the same de-escalation class that the law enforcement officers have to sit in on. It's not what you say, it's how you say it. It's very possible that some of your staff could very well settle this and de-escalate something before it gets crazy. A couple more things. Every staff individual needs to know what their role is. What is their role, and how are you going to train them? Train them like they've never been trained before, and make them happen. Make them referral. I told you about the voucher system. Oop, where'd it go? Keep in mind, make sure your staff knows that let me tell you what I can do for you, even if you know what your referrals are going to do. Happen. Make it do it. Obviously, working alone at night, let them people know. Call, whoever your chain of command is. Say, look, I'm working at home tonight, or I'm working in the church late tonight, and this is what I'm going to do. This is where I'm going to be at. Make sure you got the doors locked. Make sure you let someone know when you leave. Make sure that everybody knows where everybody's at. And if you don't hear from such and such by such and such time, well, let's call John Doe and say, I haven't heard from you, you're still at church. What's going on? A good buddy of mine, I don't know the law enforcement officers in this room, his name was Josh Good. He was an instructor at the Georgia Public Safety Training Center. Good friend of mine. His favorite saying during training was HBO. He said, come on, you got to HBO. HBO. And HBO, when we first got, what's HBO? He says, help a brother out. That was Josh's favorite saying. Come on, HBO. HBO. We got to help each other out. Or an HSO, help a sister out. HBO, that was Josh's favorite saying. And it got everybody's, and it's, of course, he has since died a number of years back. And that is still one of the favorite things I like to say, HBO. And you got to do it. Let's go here. There's the alone. Active shooters. If a shooter gets in, direct confrontation is essential. Now, this is going to be one of these ones that we got to talk about. What is your security team? What do you want them to do? I can't tell you what they need to do. Are you going to have them directly confront this individual? If it's an active shooter, what are you going to do? You got someone who's coming in and they're shooting. Do you have a security team? And what kind of defensive measures do you have? And we'll talk about it. But some of the things, dangerous, put some distance between the bad guy and the good guy. Unless this guy is an absolute crack shot with a handgun, most people aren't. It's hard to shoot. I mean, the barrels are only like, 3, 4, 5 inches long. You get 20, 30 feet. That's, unless this person is very, very proficient, there's no telling. You get shot in the foot. But I'll take one there in the head any day. But what are you going to do and how are you going to do it? Try to reduce the provocation. Try to talk to this individual. What is going on? Obviously calling 911. Evacuate. How are you going to evacuate your people? Practice it. Secured teams. Load up your people on a Wednesday afternoon. Before a covered dish supper. How are you going to evacuate your people? How are you going to have some individuals of your security team confront this individual and try to disrupt him, get the attention away from the other people, and you move the other people out? You have to figure that out. And it can be done, but that's something at your level you have to do. Who's going to work on your team? Who's going to be part of your team? What is your church going to allow? What is your other house of worship going to allow? How is it going to work? What is your insurance company saying? And we're going to get into a couple things because obviously you got all kinds of defensive measures. There's enough stuff in a sanctuary you can throw at anybody. I mean, you got candlesticks and all kinds of Bibles. You got some people that do karate. You might have some boxers. But I'm going to share this right now with you. And I train on this one a lot. I have this at my house. Wasp spray. This stuff goes out 20 feet. There's a can of wasp spray right now in my wife's bedroom next to her bed, along with her gun. But you want to put as much distance between the bad person and you. Wasp spray will do it. I mentioned it before the last training we had. I could care less if the individual's eyeballs melt in the back of their head. Have one of these at every desk within the confines of your house of worship. Have your administrative staff have one. If someone comes in and starting to get riled up and there's no way to control them and they're getting aggressive and threatening, if you are fearful of your life and you are fearful that you are going to be harmed, you can defend yourself. You can defend yourself. If you are fearful, you can defend yourself. Is that a handgun? Maybe. Does someone want to carry a handgun with them? Maybe not. Well, what's wrong with that? Just start spraying them. The fear, my concern is for the well-being of all these houses of worship and the men and women that are in it. Period. Do I have concern for the individuals who go in and kind of cause harm? Well, yeah, we all are. But my first and foremost concern is the individuals that are being threatened. And if a can of wasp spray is going to do it, then they look like a big old yellow jacket to me. Pepper spray is not bad. I've been a law enforcement officer a long time. If I've ever sprayed that stuff, it doesn't go very far. I have just as much on me than the bad guy has on him. So we're both snotting and carrying on and coughing, and it's awful. But it has its purposes. But it's not as far-reaching as the wasp spray is. Anybody been to Alaska or out west? You got the bear stuff. It's kind of an idea how it goes. That would be obviously the church security team or their staff. The bad guy would be here. But notice the big fog. It's going to get everywhere. And if you've got someone with any kind of asthma-related stuff, it's going to kind of spread around. That, not so much. You got a nice-looking little stream of bug spray going right into that person's eyeballs. Another good example that I brought up last time, a fire extinguisher. Use it. Spray it. Disorient them. It doesn't feel good when it gets in their eyes. And if they still keep coming, then you throw the red can at them. It's how are you going to protect yourself if you are in fear of your life, in fear of danger? You can protect yourself. I'll say it 1,000 times. The courts have upheld it over and over and over again. You can protect yourself. Okay, what about a gun? Let's talk about a gun a little bit, because we're almost done. That code section right there basically allows a church to allow you to carry a gun, unless in a place of worship you can carry that gun, that weapon in a place of worship, unless the governing authority permits you to do so. Okay, that came out all backward. A church is one of the areas that is prohibited to carrying a weapon, similar to a court, similar to a school. So you cannot carry a weapon in a church unless the leadership, the governing body, allows you to carry that weapon. Now, here's where you get into the kind of the side notes of this. Are you going to practice with it? If your church leadership says, yes, I'm going to let you carry it, you're responsible for that. You better let your insurance know. You better locate your law enforcement officers and say, I need help. Law enforcement officers have to train every year. We have to qualify every year of how we shoot. We have to have a qualifying score in order to continue our job, to continue to maintain our powers of arrest. What are you going to do? Now the governor basically has changed stuff that says basically now just about you can carry a gun. Anybody who buys a gun can carry a gun just about anywhere. But there's those prohibited places still. The church is one of those prohibited places still. You can't just carry in there unless the church leadership has told you that you can do that. What are you going to do? This is a target that law enforcement officers use. Now you'll notice that we have the good spots, the torso and the head. There are no arms, there are no legs. We've had people, well, why don't you shoot them in the leg? Do you see a leg or an arm on this? Law enforcement don't train to shoot at arms. They don't train to shoot at legs. Okay? You shoot where the thread, you shoot the stuff that you want to have. Yes, go ahead.
You have on the second point that says in a place of worship, unless the governing body or authority of the place of worship permits the carrying of weapons, etc.
Yes.
Does that mean that it has to be a written policy passed by the congregation? Does it mean that is a tacit authority of the congregation? Can you be more specific with that point, please?
That is a very good question. I have come from the Methodist Church back home. They still don't know who the governing authority is. Is it the preacher? Is it the trustees? Is it the staff parish? Is it the bishop? They don't know. I'm a law enforcement officer. I carry it anyway. Good point. But your local church, your local place of worship, you need to figure that out. There needs to be a written policy as far as this, that, such and such pastor, Brent Leffler, I have, under the authority of my church leadership, that we have been given, we're authorizing you to carry this weapon. However, in order for you to successfully carry this on a routine basis during church, blah, 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 you have to show that you are proficient and you have to qualify with that weapon. And that's where you need to go and contact your local shooting range, your local law enforcement, and you need to go through training because you're responsible for where that bullet goes. That little tiny piece of lead, you're responsible for that. Where's it going? Bad guy's here and somehow you get shot over here. You need to figure that out. A written policy, absolutely. It covers so much. It removes a lot of liability. But you need to figure out how that works. My church, that's a fantastic question. And it was a great question. I'm glad you asked it here so everybody can hear it. I don't know who the leadership is back home. Some will say, no, it's a preacher's job. No, it's the staff parish. No, it's the trustees. No, it's the bishop. I don't know. I don't know. I'm fortunate that I'm a law enforcement officer, so I carry it. But you need to have it in policy, and you need to have it written down. And you need to make sure, no doubt, than the other local law enforcement training that you do, that it needs to be written down that I'm going to be I have been permission to carry this gun, and there needs to be protocols for that, and there needs to be policy for that. That gun is going to be, I'm going to be required to meet with sheriff's staff 4 times a year, and I got to qualify 4 times a year with it, with a passing score. And whatever that passing score is, I'd probably make it the same thing that law enforcement officers have to do. But have that documented because you are going to ultimately be responsible for that. Questions about that? Yes?
What do you do about people that conceal carry that you're not aware of?
Well, I would make sure that the question was, what do you do about people who conceal carry that you're not aware of? Well, you need to make sure that that church understands this is the law and this is what's going to happen. They are not allowed to carry. A church is a prohibited place. Even if you're a legitimate gun owner, a legitimate license carry, concealed carry, prohibited is prohibited in the church. Let them know what the law is. All you can do is tell them. And if they violate it in some way, that's going to be a road you're going to have to take down the road. But at least you can put it out there that you have said it, you're on record, you've said it, and this is what's going to happen. Maybe that individual might want to be part of the security team. Good, bring it. If you want to have that individual. But everyone knows those cowboys that are out there. You're like, I don't want Fred having that gun in my church. That is a very touchy situation. I'm glad that comment was made because you've got to figure that one out. Policies obviously are good. Following the law is good. But training and qualification is even more so. You're responsible for that teeny tiny little bullet. And they better understand the ramifications of that. And your insurance needs to be involved in that as well. Yes, sir.
Question. Is that also for parking lot, the street down from the church or whatever? Is that in the sanctuary or is that out of perimeter?
That would be a place of worship is what it's called. I'm not sure if the parking lot would be considered the place of worship. That's me, the non-attorney. That would be a very good question for a general counsel within maybe your church. That would be a good question for an attorney. I don't know what outside of that structure means.
So, I am a lawyer. I think for clarification for people who have questions like that, does your church own that property? Is that a private lot? Can people come in there as they please? If the church owns it, I believe it's still considered a place of worship because as we learned during the pandemic, where do we start having services at? Outside or online? That's still considered a place of worship, and there's a legal argument that it could be. Now, while people are allowed to keep those firearms or weapons in their car, before they come into your place of worship, if you don't allow those firearms. They are not allowed to bring them into your place of worship unless your governing body or authority has authorized that. And to this young lady's question, sometimes we have places of worship that don't have a clear governing authority, but my recommendation would be, who signs the insurance documents? If you all are going to get an insurance payment back from, let's say, some flood damage or any other type of damage to your property, who has to be the person that signs off on that in order for you all to get that check? That person probably has some governing authority within that place of worship. So these are individualized conversations that you all are going to have with your own individual governing bodies. And while all this information is wonderful, it's going to have to be specialized to your individual house of worship because there's different sizes and concerns for each group, whether that's a temple, mosque, synagogue, church, or anything else.
Isn't it good how convoluted it gets sometimes? All right, we are almost done, and then I want to show you a real quick video that does not have any sound. Any military folk in here? Oh, good, good. Now, I'm not going to make anybody angry because I'm getting this strictly from a very good friend of mine who is a brigadier. He's a retired brigadier general from the Air Force. And some of you have seen this slide before, some maybe not. And the question is going to be, no, I'm actually going to make a statement because a general told me this. By far, the most lethal piece of equipment that the United States military has is the ballistic submarine, what they call the boomer, because you never know where it's at on any one given occasion. This is going to get us into our next question. Obviously, there's your church, you got a problem, and there you just shot a missile at somebody, and then your security team arrives, okay? Do you want your security team visible? Or do you want them indiscreet? One is just as good as the other. There's not a right or wrong answer. But do you want them visible with a sport coat, little church emblem, church security, or something to that effect? Or not? Arguments can go both ways. Regardless of the fact, they still need the same level of training depending on who they are. Do you want the bad guys or the bad girls to say, good grief, look at all the blue jackets around here. I'm not going to do anything. Or not. There's a good argument for both. There also has been a number of signs that are kind of neat that you can put out to your church property, house of worship property. Security notice, no admittance beyond this point. Check with security. Welcome to the river at Tampa Bay Church. Right of admission reserved. This is private property. Warning. Please know that this is not a gun-free zone. We are heavily armed. Any attempt will be dealt with deadly force. Yes, we are a church, and we will protect our people. Yeah, I'm not saying you got to do this. I'm just kind of throwing it out there. Once again, calling the 911, it's part of it. Stay on the phone with them. Gather as much information with them. They're going to talk to you. Don't leave the phone. Don't leave the phone. Stay with it. We've already discussed this. This was the deal about the written card. Obviously, that's a really good idea. Obviously, here we go. Remember, obviously, the best security is awareness. Watch it, watch it, watch it. Have a plan. Practice, practice, practice. What can you do for minimal intrusion? And of course, there is no assurance that a violent episode can be avoided by taking responsibility for the safety of all individuals. During worship or other services, you will have done the best you can to prevent it. I'm going to show you a quick slide. And this one real quick. Just to this is active shooter incidents between 2000 and 2018. I told you churches are rare. Houses of worship, 4%. This little sliver of the pie right here. Obviously, commerce, education, open spaces, government-related stuff, but we're talking houses of worship right here. That's how rare it is, but it doesn't matter. The people in this small slice of the pie are just as important as the whole pie. Now, I want to show you one thing, and it's going to be fun. For those who didn't see it very good, I'm going to stop it. I'm going to back this thing up. This was a church not long ago. Is it stuck in here? Here we go. I'm going to back this up. Now, for those who didn't really pay a lot of attention, I want you to pay attention up here. This person here is the shooter. This individual here is an usher. He is dead. This individual right here is part of the security team and also an usher. He is dead. This gentleman right, where is he? He's right here. He'll be popping up in a second. He's the individual who took out the shooter. I'm going to kind of stop it and play by play. Boink. This gentleman pulled a shotgun out. This person was aware and has been a kind of part of this church on occasion, but for this occasion he came in with a long trench coat and a wig. And now, play it a little more. Boom, we'll stop it. Security detail. This gentleman right here is reaching in his back for his gun. His eyes now have turned from him to him. A little bit more. I'll back it up. My button didn't work so quick. Hang on. All right. He did not get his weapon out of his holster, and I apologize for those who, this is somewhat of a graphic video, but this happened. It's called real life. So we got to take it with the good and the bad. This guy tried to pull his weapon out. His attention went to this guy. He took a shot. He's dead. The second shot goes to this individual here. The gentleman in the back. He is one of the church security individuals. He shot the guy in the head. Okay, we're going to play it. And of course, keep in mind too, if we started over, most of the individuals in this congregation had no clue what was going on. This happened in about 6 seconds, from the first shot to the guy who was killed. Okay, so we're going to go. The bad guy falls to the ground. Okay, you can see this is a gentleman. He's going over there and make sure the bad guy, the threat is gone. But what happens now? Here's an individual in the congregation. He's pulled out his handgun. Here comes another one with his handgun. So that's 3. Here comes another one with his handgun. That's 4. Someone's going to have a bazooka here in a minute. This lady sitting down here, she just pulled out her handgun. You have 5 now. And here we go, another one. This person comes in, he's got 6. So as tragic as this is, we had 3 individuals lose their life. The shooter and 2 individuals who were members of that church. That church has a church security plan. It worked. 2 individuals were killed. This individual came in there with the intent to do something. Their security plan took out the shooter, minimized the threat. So did the plan work and you had 2 individuals die? Yes. But if those 2 individuals, what's going to happen now? Because I can assure you that he was not going to stop shooting until he was out of ammunition. So that 2 individuals, innocent civilians who were killed, could have been much more. You can only minimize the damage with a church security plan. If you can prevent it on that exterior perimeter, great. But this is just one example. And fortunately, high quality video was able to capture that. You can take it apart frame by frame and see what was going on. And this is just a a last-minute reminder before we go out and get back into our communities and our own houses of worship, you have some business to do. What are you going to do? And there's so many answers. There's not a right or a wrong. You have lots of rights depending on you, your facility, your membership, the individuals that have the leadership within your houses of worship. I'm here. You got local law enforcement all over the place. You have our friends with the AG's office that are here to help in any way, shape, or form. Please let us know what we can do, because it is something we're passionate about. There's too much death. So thank y'all. Thank y'all for everything, Peter. We appreciate it. We'll holler at you later.